Good morning, vinyl community. I have my Manson file here. I also wanted to show a few records that I got yesterday. I haven't really researched them yet, but here's the first one. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. This is a speaking album. There's nothing but speeches on here. It's a John Fitzgerald Kennedy Memorial album. And this album sold 6 million copies or 4 million copies in 6 weeks. Does that sound like a successful record? Here's the next one I haven't even looked at. It's Oliver. Should be pretty interesting. It's a movie soundtrack. And who's this? Robert Maxwell, Shangri-La. I don't even know who this is singing here yet. I have no idea. Robert Maxwell and his harp and orchestra. I know nothing about it. I got these for $2 each. Angela Lansbury still in the shrink wrap. Mammy. Jerome Lawrence. The Mills Brothers, Sonia's and the Love to Remember. It's a gatefold. Double record. I know I'm not showing it too well, but I don't know anything about it. The Mills Brothers, Songs You Love to Remember. Okay. So I'm really here to read out the Manson file. That's my real purpose. To continue on of the final part 3 of this chapter here. Let's see, where do I begin? Another intriguing rumor linking the second Mrs. Manson with the mob is well worth mentioning. At least one of Manson's crime partners from the Hollywood Roosevelt pimping phase maintains that in 1959, Candy Stevens borrowed her name from a steady trick of hers, Lino LaBianca. Recently divorced and in need of feminine company before her later marriage to the divorced Rosemary Struthers, when I asked him about this story, Manson flatly denied that he knew LaBianca 10 years before he was murdered. I knew Frankie Carbo, he told me, for possibly the 5th time, and Frankie Carbo knew LaBianca. Nevertheless, when Geraldo Rivera asked him what led to the LaBianca murders, Manson's cryptic answer pointed back to Leona. The crimes off the Leavenworth Penitentiary and the divorce court in Denver, Colorado. There's a whole lot of this road that you're not seeing, man. And what could that mean? In 1963, according to Manson's prison records, he applied for transfer from Terminal Island to the music program at Leavenworth Penitentiary in Kansas. The request was denied. At a roughly the same time, Colorado state records show that Candy Leona divorced Manson on April 10, 1963, in the Denver divorce court. Well, Manson confirmed to me that that was what he was obliquely referring to. He told me that he couldn't spell out the exact connection of these incidences to the LaBianca murder because he would entail getting other people involved. And I'm not going to say nothing about that. And that he would say was that he had something to do with the information he gleaned when my old lady was in prison with the mafiosa daughter. What Manson was willing to reveal about a direct but completely unexpected mafia connection to the LaBianca killings is better relayed when he turned to the exact circumstances of this still mysterious episode. We now seen how Manson's prison meetings with Alan Karpis and Frankie Carbo, both freshly released from Alcatraz, provided him with underworld guardianship to regard in his music career. These early associations would also reemerge in relation to death of Carbo's business associate, Lino LaBianca. From his jailhouse conversations with Carbo and Karpis, Manson learned that the entertainment industry that he sought to break into was under mafia control. After his own intimate brush with Hollywood show business corruption, he insisted that overnight stardom was often the result of favors paid by the mob. This is quoting Manson now. Let me tell you something, brother. Everybody works for the mafia. If the mafia says you work for me, you work or you'll get sawed up with a chainsaw. You do what the mafia tells you or you just don't exist. If the mafia calls up and tells him you're going to let Rambo, Sylvester Stallone in Hollywood, and you're going to bring Al Pacino in, and I got a young kid called Frank Sinatra and I want him to star in, you do what you're told. Manson claims his echo by the perhaps unexpected source, Roman Polanski's friend and producer, Robert Evans. In a tone just one demi-quaver away from boasting, Evans wrote in his autobiography of his close friend and with Sidney the Myth Korshak, a mention the legendary mob lawyer started out as Al Capone's gang consigliere before moving to Hollywood to replace Bugsy Siegel as Murder Incorporated. Slightly more reasonable Tinseltown rep, here's how Evans coyly describes his patron Korshak, who helped secure him a job at Paramount Executive in his autobiography. What did he do? He was a lawyer living in California without an office. Who were his clients? Let's just say a nod from Korshak and the Teamsters changed management. A nod from Korshak and the Santa Ana racetrack opens. A nod from Korshak and Vegas shuts down. A nod from Korshak and the Dodgers suddenly play night games. Am I exaggerating? Quite the contrary. In the spirit of confidentiality, it's an underplay. What did Korshak make vanish when it came to Evans' friends, Polanski's little embarrassment at Cielo Drive? In a later passage, Evans profoundly calls the underworld dreaded Attorney General my consigliere, my godfather, my closest friend. He recalls the gratitude, how helpful his pal Sidney was when Evans was casting The Godfather. At Paramount Production, whose subject was close to both men's hearts, a direct relevance to Manson's statement quoted above, Evans related the following big favor called in by Korshak during The Godfather's pre-production. Al Pacino had signed for another picture, The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, and was contractually unavailable. The second call from Korshak, Pacino became available. With mutual contacts like Frankie Carbo, also known as the control over show business and betting sports, it's not surprising that Manson could be well informed on the invisible strings pulled by the Sidney Korshaks of this world. It is only one example of Manson's encyclopedic and unfailing accurate inside knowledge of underworld lore. The knowledge Manson makes clear wasn't obtained secondhand, but was learned the hard way. He got out of Terminal Island. He had option to choose from a far pursuing a music career. He had three options to choose from as far as pursuing his music career. First, the Carbo nightclub route. Second, Phil Kaufman's opening at MCA Universal. And a year later, three, Dennis Wilson's attempt to release a Manson LP on Brothers Records. But all three doors he found led to the same place, a future as a compliant mob marionette. For all of his admiration of the old-time Cosa Nostra, Manson resisted giving up his outlaws' precarious freedom for the gilded cage of mainstream success and a life of paychecks. Along the same lines, Manson had also frequently suggested that the helter-skelter motive cover-up of Vincent Bugliosi used to prosecute him in his trial was part of a larger plan to extend East Coast mob control over Hollywood film production. You deal me the hand and I got to play it. You give me the cards and I'm a mass murderer. I'm a hippie cult leader. I'm all the things the DA laid out so he can bring the mafia from New York so he could put Rambo in the movies. And you see what I'm saying? In other words, Bugliosi's got a lot more going on than Helter Skelter. Helter Skelter is just one of the little footsies playing. This statement may seem obscure, but it's a fact that one of the factions who had the most to hide about the true background of the Tate LaBianca murders were major film industry executives with long-standing financial connections to organized crime. This power base was wide enough to encompass a long police lineup of divergent mob players. To understand just how inconvenient this messy murders on Cielo Drives really were for the curtain shadowy powers, we need to descend down the bottomless rabbit hole to one of the darkest corners of the 60s underworld, that abyss where the mafia shook hands in secret with the slightly less obvious gangsters in government. I have to read this subtitle underneath here. As we see in the last chapter, one of Manson's most controversial but frequently repeats claims that one of the many potential scandals covered up in his case was the Polanski mainstream feature films for Paramount was financed in part by making secret pornography. While no solid proof of these allegations has emerged, Peter Bart, who was Paramount's VP of production during Robert Evans' 67-74 reign at the studio, admitted they were shooting porn films at the lodge at Paramount. This is a little known fact, so Paramount became sort of confiscated by the porn industry. Accordingly to the documentary film Inside Deep Throat, in known of Polanski, Evans, and Gutowski's damage control over meeting with Korshak at Paramount the day after the murders. Here's another little thing called Co-Conspirators, Hidden Trails Between the Daily Plaza and Cielo Drive Cover-Ups. This is a quote from attorney Jerry Spence at the mock trial of Lee Harvey Oswald, filmed for a 1986 television show. The truth of the case has been concealed from us, and before it's over, we'll need to turn from Mr. Bugliosi and ask him why he hasn't even now, Mr. Bugliosi, who represents the United States of America and the CIA and the FBI and the intelligence agency and the Secret Service, all represents its huge plethora of power in this country. Why haven't you, even now, come forward with the whole truth? That's what attorney Jerry Spence was asking Bugliosi. So I think we're going to end now because all this is going to go back into the Beatles connections and satanic cult connections with the Beatles and more about Charlie's background with the mafiosos, including a guy named Joseph Ball. Was he related to Lucille Ball? I have no idea, but he was definitely a mobster who was an influence on Charlie Manson's future. So we'll say thanks to all the VC members and all the crime community members, and God bless all the families and children.